Today, we're diving deep into an institution that is, quite literally, the backbone of the Indian state, the civil service. It's incredibly powerful, it's prestigious, and, wow, is it debated. But whether you realize it or not, its work affects the lives of over 1 billion people every single day.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into why it's called India's steel frame. Then, we'll see how it really functions as the nation's engine. After that, we have to look at the cracks that are starting to appear in the system. And finally, we'll ask the big question, what's being done to reform it for the future?
All right, let's kick things off with that really powerful nickname, the steel frame. I mean, where did a name like that even come from?
Well, that line comes directly from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, one of India's most important founding fathers. You have to imagine, right after independence, there was a lot of chaos. He saw the civil service as this essential, unbending structure that was going to hold the new nation together. It was the one point of stability when absolutely everything else was changing.
So what is it exactly? Well, think of it like this. The civil service is the permanent part of the government. You know, politicians and ministers, they get elected, they serve their term, and then they're replaced. But the civil servants, the bureaucracy, they remain. They're the ones who are actually tasked with turning all those political promises into action on the ground.
Okay, so if it's the frame, how does it also work as the engine? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this massive system actually operates and why it's so incredibly important.
First off, you gotta know this isn't just one single thing. It's actually a huge collection of different services. You've probably heard of the really famous ones. The IS, who are the top-level administrators, the IPS, who lead the police forces, and the IFS, who are India's diplomats around the world. But trust me, this system is so much bigger, covering everything from taxes and railways to managing forests.
And here's how it works in practice. So, imagine the government in New Delhi announces a big, new healthcare program. Civil servants in the capital help write the policy. But it's an IAS officer way out in some remote district who has to figure out how to make that policy actually work for the people living there. They're like the transmission belt, connecting the big vision to the local reality.
And this is where it gets personal for all of us. This stuff isn't just abstract policy. It's the official on-the-ground organizing flood relief. It's the commissioner making sure public health standards are met. It's even the office that issues your driver's license. For most citizens, the civil service is the face of the government.
But, and you knew there was a but coming, it is definitely not a perfect system. Despite how fundamental it is, that steel frame is under a lot of stress and facing some really serious criticism.
And that leads to this huge question that's being debated all over India right now. Is this frame, which was once thought to be completely unbreakable, actually starting to crack under the pressure? Right here, you can see the central tension. On one side, you have the promise, the ideal, a politically neutral, super efficient organization that's just dedicated to serving the public. But on the other side, you have the reality that critics so often point to, a system that can be bogged down by political interference, slowed by endless red tape, and is constantly fighting a public perception of corruption.
And that feeling about red tape? It really shows up in the data. When you ask people about their experiences with the bureaucracy, the word slow comes up again and again. Now, not every interaction is bad, of course, but this perception of inefficiency is a huge challenge for the service's public image.
So all of this brings us to our final section, the massive debate over reform. With all these challenges, can the steel frame be reshaped, maybe even remolded, to handle the demands of the 21st century?
What's pretty amazing when you look at a timeline like this is that calls for reform are absolutely nothing new. I mean, commissions have been suggesting major changes for decades. The latest and maybe the most ambitious effort is something called Mission Karmayogi, which is trying to create a fundamental shift in how civil servants are trained and, importantly, evaluated.
So what are these reforms really focused on? Well, most of them zero in on 3 key areas. First, recruitment. There's a big push to hire more specialists, not just generalists who know a little about everything. Next, training. The idea is to move towards continuous learning and job performance, not just relying on one big exam at the beginning of a career. And finally, accountability. Creating much more transparency to build public trust and really clamp down on corruption.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. The Indian civil service was designed to be a steel frame, to provide stability. But in a country that is changing so incredibly fast, can that same frame be remolded? Can it become more agile, more specialized, and more accountable? The answer to that question is going to shape the entire future of Indian governance.